Hi, I'm Tara from Wild Bird Farm, and today we're going to talk all about sweet peas. This is my 5th year growing sweet peas, and they were actually one of the very first cut flowers I grew on my flower farm. My very first year, I think I would give them credit for actually the DIY hoop house we put up, because I had read all about sweet peas and that they grew really great in cool tunnels. And so that was kind of my gateway flower. That and zinnias were some of the first things I started on the farm. Now we are talking about the fragrant sweet peas that you grow for the flowers, not the perennial ones. These are annual, and these aren't edible. So these aren't any sort of peas that you'd be growing to eat. The smell of sweet peas is divine. If you haven't smelled them before and you aren't quite ready to grow them yourself, I would find a friend who has them, because they will quickly talk you into growing them yourself. Now I grow here in Zone 5 in central Iowa. The first year I grew them, as I mentioned, I put them in our unheated hoop house. I planted them out in the early winter months. They grew great. Sweet peas like to grow, they like consistently moist soil, definitely not soggy, but they love cool weather. When the temperature gets warmer in the summer, mine fizzle out, so I don't have them all season long. These like to get a start in the cool. They like to grow low and slow, as they say, so we don't want really leggy plants. I actually found a picture I'll show you later. My first season, mine were pretty tall and leggy, reaching for the light. We want them low, bushy and short. We want them to branch on their own if they can. So depending on your zone, you may find it best to plant sweet peas out in the fall and overwinter them for early spring blooms. When I'm planting here in Zone 5 in my hoop house, they are going out anywhere from November to February, and I'm going to be getting blooms then in March and April into May, and then they generally fizzle out for me. The second year, I wanted to go big with sweet peas, and I decided I was going to grow them outside because they took up so much room in my hoop house. Well, that did not work out well. We have very windy and cold springs here, and the wind just ripped them apart. Even though I tried to harden them off, it did not work out very well for me. The third year, they went back in my hoop house, but they do take up a decent amount of space. With sweet peas, you have to have something for them to climb up. So I use the plastic netting, and I put it vertically between T-posts. That works really well, but it takes up a large amount of space. The biggest thing for me is I can't get the long stem lengths on sweet peas that I see growers out in the Pacific Northwest getting. The first round or two of sweet peas, I'll have 12 inches maybe. But as I continue to pick them throughout that short season, my stems are 6 or 8 inches long. Those are great for posies in my home, but they aren't long enough, really even at 12 inches, for me to work them into my wrap bouquets, which is how I sell a lot of my flowers. So that leads us to last year. I decided I'm only going to grow sweet peas outside around my house. So I have a trellis on the back of our house that's by our covered deck. I thought that would be great. We could smell the sweet peas from the deck. And that did work out well. I didn't use any for cuts except to bring in a couple little posies into my own home. I interplanted those a little bit later into the season, so I guess it was probably June when I planted some of those purple hyacinth beans in with the sweet peas, knowing that they would grow up, and as the sweet peas died back, then the hyacinth bean could flower, and that actually worked quite well. I may do that again on that trellis, although I like to try out different annual vines, so we'll see what I come up with. But I did miss them. I did miss having enough sweet peas to bring into my home last year. So this year I'm going to be starting, I think my pack was 50 seeds. I'm going to be starting those. I'll show you how I do it step by step, but the easiest way that I've found is I start them on a damp paper towel. And you can certainly, some people soak the sweet pea seeds, some people nick them. They have a hard seed coat that you need to get through. I will soak them occasionally, but if I'm doing the wet paper towel method, I'll just do it in there, and I'll talk more about that. The other big thing with sweet peas is they don't want their roots disturbed, and they grow very long roots. So they have long root trainer trays that work great for these. I don't have any of those. In the past, I have used, I think they were 2 by 2 inch little plastic pots, and I bet they were 3 inches deep. I put a sweet pea in each corner, well, in 2 corners of those, and that worked out great for me. I'm not sure what I'm going to put them in quite yet this year. I need to find, I got some perennial plugs last year, and they came in deeper cells. So I think I'm going to use those. So they do like room for their roots to grow. I have seen where people successfully grow them in soil blocks. So if that's something you do, go ahead and try that out. Okay, so assuming you'll be planting your sweet peas outside, I would look for a protected area, especially if you can keep them a little bit out of the wind. I think that's a good thing. But you'll be looking to start your sweet peas 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. They can go out a few weeks before that last frost generally. And I've found that they sprout pretty quickly. So 3 to 5 days, we're gonna be seeing that seed coat break open and the little roots start. And then once you do plant them out, or if you want to plant them out by direct sowing and not pre-sprouting them, you can definitely do that too. One trick I did for a few years in a row is I would get them started in the wet paper towels where I just see the little white roots, and then I would put them directly in the soil in my hoop house about 1 inch down. That worked actually really well. So then I'm not using up space under my grow racks for my lighting, but I know that those little seeds have a fighting chance because they've broken their seed coat. So let's look a little bit more. I dug through some pictures from past years, and I think that'll help me kind of explain the process that I'm gonna go through here in late winter for the sweet peas. So if you're interested in soaking, just an hour or 2 in lukewarm water will kind of soften up that seed coat. And I have nicked other types of seeds. I just use a nail file and just snip off a very tip of that seed coat. That works really well for lupins and some other really hard coated seeds. I am growing the Mammoth Choice Mix from Johnny's. I actually have that same mix from another supplier. And then in the brown paper bag are some seeds I saved. Sweet pea seeds are very easy to collect and save from year to year. So whether you've soaked them or not, your next step will be to get a paper towel damp and just put your seeds in there. I then put that damp paper towel in a plastic baggie and leave it at room temperature for several days. They don't need bottom heat, but I do have a heat mat in my seed starting room, so I went ahead and added it there. Another note is sweet peas do not need light to germinate. Here's a picture I found from a couple years ago. Doing this method, the roots will sprout out of that seed coat. Those little white things that you see in the picture are the beginnings of the roots. It's at this point that you want to push them into your potting soil about 1 inch down. Shortly after these roots appear, tiny green sprouts will appear, and you can also plant them at that point, but they are very delicate. You don't want to break off either of these new growth points. Here's that picture of the first year where I had them in a little bit too warm of a room, and those starts are a bit leggy. The second year here, you can see where they're bushier and they're already branching down low. You can also see those 2 inch deeper pots here, and since I plant them out pretty quickly into the hoop house, I'm not needing the super long root trainers. Again, these starts are getting planted out in the unheated tunnel, generally in February, or if I start them the fall before, it's in October or November. This gives me March, April, and May blooms. They want really rich organic soil and they like to be fertilized, so keep that in mind. If you deal with slugs, we don't have that too much here, but we do have rabbits. Rabbits really like to eat sweet peas, so you may need to put up some protection if they bug you in your area. So you'll want to fertilize pretty frequently once they get going, especially when they're in the ground. Even when they're flowering, they like fertilizer every week or two. I like to use a fish or seaweed kelp fertilizer, and you can dilute it down pretty good when they're smaller. I guess the biggest thing with sweet peas, and this kind of happened to me, is you need to pick them very regularly. I could have gone out every day and picked them. I was shooting for every 3 days to keep them picked. The more you pick, the more they'll produce. I did find that the stems got shorter throughout the season though, so your longest stems are generally going to be on the early side of their blooms. But you want to go out and pick them often. I have cut them to be able to work them into my wrap bouquets, where I would not just take the flowering stem, but I'd take some of the green, some of the leaf matter, and I'd just cut down farther. That actually works. They're thin stems, but they work pretty well that way. So that might be an option if your stems aren't getting as long as you need them to be. So my plan for this year, I'm trying to get a little bit back to growing things that I enjoy for myself. You know, I made a business out of this and that's doing well, but I also want to grow things that make me happy. I missed the sweet peas last year. I missed the scent in my home. So I'm going to be growing anywhere between 30 and 50. I'm going to dedicate a small area in my hoop house, make sure I have good supports. I'm not sure if I'm going to use bamboo poles yet, or if I'll just use a little bit of that vertical plastic that I've used before. I can just reuse that with the T-posts, but you want something sturdy for them to climb up. You sometimes have to help them get started. I would tie them in with some jute twine sometimes to help them kind of get going up whatever vertical you're having them climb. But my goal is just to have enough for me to bring in some nice sized posies to put in my kitchen and in my bathrooms, maybe in the bedroom, places that I love to have that scent.
If you want to read more about sweet peas and especially the specifics for temperatures, check out Farmer Bailey. He is a broker for Grow and Sell. I will put the link, if I can find it, directly to his sweet pea growing guide.
That's all for today. I hope that was helpful, and throughout the season I will show you updates on the sweet peas. Coming up, be sure to follow and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We will be looking at planting snapdragons soon, eucalyptus seeds. We're going to take a look at our ranunculus when we can get out in the hoop house. Lots and lots more to come. So please subscribe as we have a very busy spring ahead. Until next time.